Beyond Victory. From Tehran.
We recognize the supreme responsibility to make a peace which will command goodwill from the overwhelming masses of the peoples of the world and banish the scourge and terror of war for many generations. We shall seek the cooperation and active participation of all nations, large and small, whose peoples in heart and mind are dedicated, as are our own peoples, to the elimination of tyranny and slavery, oppression and intolerance. We look with confidence to the day when all the people of the world may live free lives, untouched by tyranny, and according to their own varying desires and their own consciences. Signed, Roosevelt, Stalin, Churchill.
In these words, the leaders of three great nations voice not only their own hope and determination, but the world's hopes for a new year and a new age. It has truly been said, this is a moral, not a diplomatic document, which appeals to the same spiritual forces and ideals as our own Declaration of Independence. But still more important than that the appointed representatives of nearly half the human race have caught this vision is the fact that countless millions of everyday men and women the world over share it. The new tyranny that would have driven us back to barbarism is today met by a new, unquenchable desire for freedom and for international cooperation. For several months, the Worldwide Broadcasting Foundation of Boston, in collaboration with the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, has brought you these weekly Beyond Victory programs, and as we recall the messages which we have heard from men of many walks of life and several nations, we find they have all borne witness to the same bright vision. As a new year of decision dawns on mankind, we ask you to listen again to these stirring voices. First, let us hear from a distinguished educator, Dr. Nicholas Murray Butler, President of Columbia University and of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace.
We have learned now that minding our own business involves minding other people's business as well. The world has long since been bound together by the telegraph, the telephone, the electric spark, and now by the airplane. What affects us today will affect 20 other nations tomorrow, and what affects them will affect us. The only way in which we can be assured of maintaining prosperity and peace is through cooperation with other like-minded peoples.
Here is a well-known industrialist and inventor, Mr. Charles F. Kettering, Vice President in charge of research of General Motors Corporation.
I believe that the future can be almost anything we want to make it. And if we'll take into consideration the factors that we have to build the future with, that is people and things and climate and everything else, then we can go ahead and do a swell job. But we must also remember that what we think is perhaps the most important. What we must do is to set our course, not a random course, not a wishful thinking course, but a course which will get us to the destination we want. Whether it is a pleasant one or not is not important. I think with the energy and the faith and the determination with which this war has proven that free men of all nations possess, we can take this mysterious future, which isn't very clear, and from it carve out anything that human imagination can think of that is worth carving out. That is, something that is a benefit to the human family, and provided we are willing to work for it.
Next, we hear from a well-known economist, Dr. John B. Conliffe, who is Associate Director of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace.
If we really set out to bring the rest of the world up to modern standards of efficient organization, there will be employment for us and great productive advances for them. The day has gone by when we can go in and do this by force. It has to be a cooperative venture, and that means it must be international. The question for us is whether we are ready, in our own interest, to work with other people to build up the kind of world we want to live in.
Here is a member of the Senate of the United States, the Honorable Joseph H. Ball of Minnesota.
As long as the United States remains a democratic republic, I do not believe there is the slightest chance of our becoming an aggressor. In the very heart of the democratic process is the belief and the faith that the majority of men and women want to be decent, to do what is best for all the people, and protect and defend the rights of their fellows. Without that belief and faith, Hitler's attacks on democracy would be true. And what is true of individuals is likewise true of nations. If we proceed to set up our machinery to maintain peace on the assumption that scoundrels among nations are in the majority, we're licked before we start. Our only hope is a firm faith that the great majority of nations and peoples want peace, decency, and justice, and that it is the outlaw minority against which we must be on guard.
Here is an eminent journalist and student of international affairs, Mr. Richard J. Walsh, editor of Asia and the Americas.
We simply have to sweep out of our minds the rubbish of the 18th and 19th centuries. That line about East and West, that never the twain shall meet, was poetic rubbish. The white man's burden is sentimental rubbish with an imperialist slant. Talk of superior races and inferior races is rubbish. As long as we white people discriminate in any way against the Chinese or any other race because they're a different color, we are giving Hitler and the Japanese invaluable ammunition. If the world is to go forward, we must live up to our own Declaration of Independence. We must recognize that all men are created equal. We must prove to the world in every way that we believe our allies on the other side of the Pacific are just as good as we are, and just as good as our allies on the other side of the Atlantic. If we all do this, then East and West have met indeed. And on this basis of equality, we can work together and live in peace together.
And here is a well-known scientist, Dr. Watson Davis, Director of Science Service of Washington, D.C.
The world is such a small place that social irritation anywhere on the face of the globe will hurt us and everyone else. We may attempt to turn away, but sooner or later, as in the making of this war, speedy transport, swift communication, and effectiveness of ideas will bring the troubles of distant regions to our own front yards. In working out our world future, it's ideas and the things that ideas create that are important. We shall have lost this war if we don't create a peace in which everyone can have a satisfying, constructive part. This will take a lot of planning and plenty of cooperation.
And now let us hear from an eminent European statesman, His Excellency Jan Masaryk, Vice Premier and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czechoslovak government in exile.
The Moscow Conference, the meeting at Cairo and Tehran, indicate that the world is going in the right direction. We will again have a world where men will regain the human dignity of true and simple believers in Christ's teaching. We are approaching this period because through the darkness of the moment, the great light is already piercing through with hopeful rays. Soon, the brute and boisterous force of violent men will be destroyed. And by next Christmas Day, we hope and pray to see a new world arise out of the ruins of this troubled earth which savagery has made so hideous. Our people look to you to help to remold it. When that day dawns, knowing you for what you are, I trust you will speak in the words of the prophet Isaiah, of the race which was most humiliated and tortured by the Nazi savages, and which had to endure more than its share of human suffering to bring about the new world to which we are looking forward. Listen to the prophet. Bind up the broken-hearted. Proclaim liberty to the captives. Open the prison to them that are bound. With this hope, as a humble citizen of tortured Czechoslovakia, I salute you, and I wish you Godspeed and a happy reunion with your sons and daughters, who will make it possible.
We bring you a New Year's message from the founder and president of the Worldwide Broadcasting Foundation, which brings you these Beyond Victory programs, Mr. Walter S. Lemon. Mr. Lemon.
In behalf of my colleagues in the Worldwide Broadcasting Foundation, I would like to take these closing moments of our program to thank all of our listeners and our supporters for their encouragement in helping us carry forward these Beyond Victory programs. We trust that they have carried to you some spark of inspiration for the tasks ahead, some glimpse of the complex problems our statesmen are now facing, and which you can help solve through your own enlightened thinking as individual citizens. In the changing pattern of the program we have just presented, one fact stands out. The leaders of thought in America and throughout the United Nations are themselves united in a common hope for a better world, to emerge phoenix-like from the ashes of the conflagration through which we are now passing. An allegory I heard a short time ago may be appropriate at this point. In this allegory, it seems that an ancient tribe dwelt in a deep ravine between two high cliffs. They had never glimpsed the top for generations. Finally, one group of pioneering young men started up the winding path along the side of this steep cliff. Their flaming torches in the night made pinpoints of light as they struggled up toward the summit. Stumbling over the rocks and twisted vines, they persevered, and soon the leaders reached the top of the cliff just as the sun's first rays came over the rim. Never having seen the glories of a sunrise before in their dark valley, they stood awestruck in wonderment. Soon becoming accustomed to the light of day, they looked across the wide plateau, and there, coming out of similar chasms, were other young men of different build, but of equal vigor. Finally, in glad recognition, they shouted across in friendliness, and soon they were cultivating this rich plateau together. Take heart, dwellers in the dark chasm, for high on the rim of time the day star heralds the first rays of a new dawn. A brighter 1944 to you all.
Thank you, Mr. Lemon. Next week, the Worldwide Broadcasting Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to public enlightenment in world affairs, begins a new group of Beyond Victory programs in which you will hear from representatives of some of the countries which still await their deliverance from Axis slavery. These programs are brought to you in collaboration with the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and the station to which you are listening. Your comments or suggestions will be welcomed if you will write to the Beyond Victory Program, 630 Fifth Avenue, New York. That is the Beyond Victory Program, 630 Fifth Avenue, New York, or in care of your own station. Listen in again next week at this same time to Beyond Victory. Beyond Victory. All of the United Nations, and particularly those which are still waiting for deliverance from Axis slavery, have needs, purposes, and aspirations to which the world must give full consideration. To help them to win a sympathetic hearing, Beyond Victory brings you a group of programs in which you will hear from leading citizens of some of the martyred countries. In the present program, we shall hear a voice from the great nation which long ago helped us to win our own independence and is rightly called the second homeland of all civilized men, France. These Beyond Victory programs are presented by the Worldwide Broadcasting Foundation of Boston and the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace to help you to understand the problems which our country and all countries will face after the war. To speak for France, we are fortunate in having with us Dr. André Maurice, professor of French literature at Harvard University, who is equally at home with us and in the country for which he was fighting at the hour of collapse. Dr. Maurice will speak to you of France in the world of tomorrow. Dr. Maurice.
In the very month of her defeat, in June 1940, the future destiny of France was prefigured. On one side, Pétain and his men were repeating to the French that two roads only remained open for France. It must collaborate with Hitler in order to manage a place for France in the new Europe, and at home there must be an anti-democratic revolution. In short, collaboration and fascism. On the other hand, another voice from London, the voice of de Gaulle, was telling the same French people, France lost a great battle, but she has not lost the war. Therefore, France must go on fighting, and in every possible way, France must oppose the will of the Germans and of their Vichy servants. In short, outside of France, fighting, and inside, resistance. Today, Vichy and its policies are a total wreck, an absolute and dismal failure. But what is growing in power and vitality, because it represents the true continuity of France, is the multiform resistance, which has become a tremendous force, well armed and ready to act. The underground is not a political group, but the unanimous effort of men of all classes, all parties, all conditions and professions, who accept deadly dangers and merciless repression, standing ready for the day when they will surge forth, weapons in hand, in the bright sun of a reborn France. This is the France of today. I dislike hearing people say, France will live again. Never has France ceased to live. In fact, since the great days of the Revolution, she has never known a more intense life, a more dangerous, beautiful, and fruitful life. This is why she has the right to speak and to be heard. Men who represent her, men from the resistance or men who've been carrying on the fight since 1940, are in Algiers today, seeking to solve the problems of the future of France and of her partnership in the great family of nations. The first problem is the reconstitution of a democratic France. These French people, who've been struggling and resisting for more than 3 years, have the inflexible will to restore in France a true democracy in a spirit of liberty, of equality, and of social justice. On minor points they may disagree, but on one point they are unanimous: their hatred of fascism, under any form or pretext, open, disguised, or camouflage. Of fascism, they have an immediate knowledge which the average American does not possess. So they are mercilessly outspoken against anyone who still believes it is possible to do business with people of fascist leanings. Either we are fighting for freedom and democracy without qualifications or reservations, or else we are compromising with the forces of reaction and fascism. if we are in favor of a new world structure of true democracy, then we must acknowledge the fact that these French upholders of democracy deserve our confidence. Another problem we shall soon face will be the rehabilitation and reconstruction of France. And while at first France will need all the help that can be given her, she is also already preparing, both inside and outside, to devote all her energies to her own reconstruction and to help in the work of world rehabilitation. The third problem of tomorrow is the restoration to France of her rightful place in the family of free nations. For the peace of the world depends upon a cooperative organization in which each and every nation will have its voice. Peace-loving and eager to resume her role as a great civilized nation, France awaits and demands the opportunity to cooperate in the building of the world of tomorrow as a loyal and brave partner whom all of her friends can look straight in the eyes in a spirit of confidence, goodwill, and human solidarity.
Thank you, Dr. Maurice. It is good indeed to be reminded that France never has ceased to live, and that she is already planning for the part which she will play in the post-war world. You've not only made us think, you've aroused more questions in our minds than you could answer in one program. But I hope you'll be kind enough to answer a few representative ones from the members of our studio audience. And here's the first.
Dr. Maurice, could you give us some additional information about the underground? How much work is it actually doing? And what sort of people are willing to risk their lives by working with it?
Well, as to what sort of people, I would answer all sorts of people. Members of labor organizations and intellectuals, students, members of the clergy, lawyers, physicians, farmers. Some use violent methods, sabotage and destruction. Some are preparing for the battle of liberation. Some are working to maintain close contact between occupied France and the rest of the world, especially England and North Africa. Their most important means of action are their clandestine newspapers, secret radio stations, the collection of weapons and ammunition. It's no longer a secret that all the various groups are today well coordinated and that there exists in France a national committee of French resistance with ramifications all over the country. Of course, it is extremely dangerous work, and I was told lately that among the soldiers of the underground, the losses are in fact heavier than on most of the battlefields.
Dr. Maurice, from what I've heard, it seems to me the Germans have deliberately tried to starve the people of France so that they will be too weak to fight for their freedom when the time comes. Just how far do you think this hideous plan has succeeded?
Unfortunately, such a plan could not help succeeding to a large extent. Disintegration of the race is part of the plan expressed in Mein Kampf, and it is possible today to see some of the sad results. The death rate among French children has increased by more than 40%, and tuberculosis is gaining ground steadily. The people of France are receiving less than half the food ration considered as the minimum needed to sustain normal life. I must add that to keep within Germany more than 1 million prisoners of war, plus more than 500,000 workers, amounts to depriving France of a large proportion of what should be her next generation. The problem of feeding the existing children of France is therefore vital in the light of future reconstruction. And of course, this is not the case for France only, but for all the overrun nations.
Most of us here, Dr. Maurice, are deeply interested in planning some sort of world organization after the war. Is there any way in which we can know how France feels about these problems?
It is difficult to give a specific answer, since there cannot be at the present moment a real consultation of French public opinion. All I can say is that the editorials of many of the underground newspapers express the wish of Frenchmen to see the creation of either a new League of Nations or of some international organization which must have the necessary power to enforce its decisions. Of course, this is nothing new, for it has been the position of France ever since the early days of discussion about the League of Nations. Hopes of the same sort are already being expressed in Algiers. And may I add that this is in the true French tradition, for plans and projects for international organizations were drawn up by French writers as early as the 16th century.
May I ask you one more question, Dr. Maurice? France and the United States have been friends for a very long time. What can we do now and in the future to cement that friendship?
Since the beginnings of American democracy, since the days of the French Revolution, France and the United States have been closely linked together by their common ideal of freedom and equality. The Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the French Declaration of the Rights of Men and the Citizen are all of the same inspiration. I know there have been clouds at times and difficulties, unavoidable incidents in the best of friendships, but our two great democracies were victorious together 25 years ago, and I know that if we all remain faithful to our past and to our tradition, the same friendship will remain alive after the victory which is to come. Today, it depends to a large extent on a common will to study, analyze, discuss, and understand in a spirit of good faith and frankness all the problems in which our two countries are interested. And I believe it is just what we've been trying to do in this broadcast.
Thank you again, Dr. Maurice. We shall not soon forget what you've told us about the role which unconquered and unconquerable France must play in the world of tomorrow. I'm sure many of our listeners would like to give your words further study, and I'm glad to say that Beyond Victory will gladly send without charge a copy of this talk by Dr. André Maurice to anyone who will write and ask us for it. Address requests to the Beyond Victory program, 630 Fifth Avenue, New York. That is the Beyond Victory program, 630 Fifth Avenue, New York, or write in care of your own station. The Worldwide Broadcasting Foundation of Boston, a non-profit organization dedicated to enlightenment in world affairs, brings you Beyond Victory each week in collaboration with the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Next week, the station to which you are listening will donate this same hour to another interesting discussion of the world you may help create Beyond Victory. Listen in again next week at this same hour to Beyond Victory.